Have you ever had a dream that felt so real you couldn't tell where the dream ended and reality began? Now imagine waking up in a quiet little town. The streets look normal. The people smile politely. The houses are beautiful. But when you try to find the town on a map, it simply doesn't exist. No GPS, no records, no way out. And the strangest part, everyone else acts as if this is completely normal. This is the story of Paul, a man who woke up in a place no one should ever be able to find, and what he discovered there would change him forever. Paul was 34 years old and spent most of his life chasing forgotten places. He wasn't a tourist. He was a travel photographer. While others searched for famous landmarks, Paul searched for abandoned villages, hidden forests, and roads that most people never noticed. His camera had taken him across mountains, deserts, and lonely countryside. He believed every forgotten place had a story waiting to be told. But he never imagined becoming part of one himself. One autumn evening, Paul was driving along a narrow mountain road after finishing a photography trip. Dark clouds rolled across the sky. Rain poured so heavily that the windshield wipers struggled to keep up. The road twisted through thick forests where even the headlights could barely cut through the darkness. His phone had already lost signal nearly an hour earlier. There were no nearby towns, no passing cars, only rain, wind, and silence. Then, without warning, someone appeared in the middle of the road. A lone figure stood perfectly still. No umbrella, no flashlight, no movement. Paul slammed on the brakes and turned the steering wheel sharply. The tires skidded across the wet pavement. Everything spun, glass shattered, metal groaned. Then, darkness. When Paul finally opened his eyes, the storm was gone. Warm sunlight shined across his face. Birds sang softly nearby. For a brief moment he thought someone had rescued him. He slowly stood up. His head ached. His clothes were damp. But strangely, there was no sign of his wrecked car. Instead, he found himself standing beside a quiet road leading into a peaceful little town. Neat rows of houses lined the streets. Fresh flowers decorated every porch. Old-fashioned street lamps stood beside spotless sidewalks. Everything looked almost too perfect. An elderly woman watering flowers smiled at him. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "You must be new." Paul looked around in confusion. "Can you tell me where I am?" The woman simply smiled. "You'll understand soon." Before he could ask another question, she calmly walked away. Paul pulled out his phone. No signal. He tried again. Still nothing. No internet. No emergency calls. Nothing. He searched his offline maps. The road he had traveled wasn't there. Neither was the town. He zoomed in, zoomed out, checked nearby regions. There was only forest. No roads. No buildings. No town. It was as if the place beneath his feet had never existed. Trying to stay calm, Paul began walking through the streets. The town was strangely peaceful. Too peaceful. Every person smiled politely as they passed. Every shop appeared open. Yet something felt wrong. No one seemed surprised to see a stranger. No children laughed in the parks. No dogs barked. Even the breeze felt unusually quiet. Finally, Paul entered a small cafe hoping someone could help. The customers looked at him for only a second before returning to their coffee. The waitress approached with a gentle smile. "You look lost," she said. "I need directions," Paul replied. "I was in a car accident. I need to reach the nearest highway." The waitress paused. Her smile never faded. Then she quietly answered, "There isn't one." Paul frowned. "What do you mean?" She leaned a little closer. "There are many roads. But they all come back here." At first, Paul thought she was joking. He would soon discover she wasn't. Paul left the cafe with more questions than answers. There was no way every road could lead back to the same place. It made no sense. He picked the widest road leading north and walked for nearly an hour. The town slowly disappeared behind him. Tall trees surrounded the road. For the first time, he felt hopeful. "I'm finally getting out," he whispered. Then the trees began to thin. The road curved gently to the right. And standing in front of him was the same cafe, the same flower shop, the same town square. Paul froze. His heart pounded. He knew he hadn't turned around. He knew he had walked in a straight line. Yet somehow, he was back where he had started. Over the next 2 days, Paul tried everything. He followed the river. He climbed a nearby hill. He marked trees with his pocket knife. He even walked through the forest instead of using the roads. Every path, every trail, every direction, always brought him back to the center of town. It was impossible, and the town only became stranger. Every day at exactly 12 o'clock, the old clock tower rang. But the sun never seemed to move. It was always noon. No matter how long Paul stayed awake, no matter how many hours passed, time itself seemed trapped. One evening he noticed something even more disturbing. As the church bell rang, every resident stopped what they were doing. Without speaking a single word, they calmly walked into their homes. Within seconds, the streets were empty. Not a single light remained on. The entire town fell silent. Paul was completely alone. Then, he heard footsteps behind him. He spun around. No one. Only a cold breeze. The next morning, determined to uncover the truth, Paul entered the town's tiny library. Most of the books were old and covered in dust. An elderly librarian watched him from the corner. Without looking up, she quietly said, "You're searching for answers." Paul nodded. "I just want to go home." She finally looked into his eyes. "This town only appears to people who are running from something." Paul frowned. "I'm not running." The librarian slowly stood and handed him a weathered journal. "I said the same thing," she whispered. Paul opened the journal. The first pages described a man who had awakened in the same mysterious town decades earlier. Every detail matched his own experience. The endless roads, the frozen clock, the silent nights. As he reached the final page, his hands began to tremble. Written in faded ink were the words, "The only exit is the truth you've refused to face." At that moment, memories Paul had buried for years rushed back. Years earlier, he had been driving with his younger brother after a family vacation. They laughed, played music, talked about the future. For just 1 second, Paul glanced at his phone. When he looked back, another vehicle had appeared around the bend. The accident that followed changed everything. Paul survived. His younger brother did not. Although everyone told him it wasn't entirely his fault, Paul never believed them. He quit seeing friends, stopped visiting family, buried himself in endless travel, hoping every new destination would help him forget. But guilt always followed him. The town hadn't trapped his body. It had trapped the pain he refused to confront. That night, Paul followed a narrow path leading to an old stone bridge on the edge of the forest. Standing in the middle of the bridge was the same mysterious figure he had seen during the storm. The stranger spoke calmly. "This place exists between memory and reality. It welcomes those who cannot forgive themselves." Paul lowered his head. "I've carried this guilt for years. I thought if I kept moving, I could leave it behind." The stranger shook his head. "You can outrun places. You can never outrun yourself." For the first time in years, Paul allowed himself to cry. He admitted his mistakes. He accepted his grief. He stopped punishing himself for a tragedy that could never be undone. "I miss my brother every day," he whispered, "but I know he wouldn't want me to stop living." The moment those words left his lips, the wind began to roar. The ground trembled. The buildings dissolved into drifting mist. The clock tower cracked and disappeared. The endless roads faded into light. The entire town slowly vanished. Paul opened his eyes. Bright hospital lights shone above him. Machines beeped softly nearby. A doctor smiled with relief. "Welcome back," she said. "You've been unconscious since the accident." Weeks later, after recovering, Paul unpacked his camera. Every photograph from his trip had disappeared. Mountains, roads, forests, all gone. Except one. A single photograph showed an old wooden sign standing in thick fog. The town's name was blurred beyond recognition. But beneath it, carved into the wood, were 7 haunting words. "We'll be here if you ever lose yourself again." Paul never found that town on any map. He never met another person who believed his story. But from that day forward, he stopped running from his past. He repaired broken relationships. He honored his brother's memory instead of hiding from it. And he finally began living the life he thought he no longer deserved. Moral of the story: some of the hardest prisons to escape are the ones we build inside our own minds. Guilt, regret, and fear can trap us more effectively than locked doors or endless roads. The past cannot be rewritten, but it can be accepted. True freedom begins the moment we stop running from our pain and find the courage to face it. Because sometimes, the only map that matters is the one that leads us back to ourselves. Paul allowed himself to cry. He admitted his mistakes. He accepted his grief. He stopped punishing himself for a tragedy that could never be undone.